Lifeboat is the first episode of the 4th season of Wings. This is directed by Andy Ackerman, and there will be some spoilers as I talk about this episode, but I don't have as many thoughts as it wasn't as enjoyable the second time round. And it's not just because I could remember what happened, because I couldn't remember everything. So for me, I still had questions about how they were going to resolve things, even though I could obviously remember a good chunk of it. So maybe watching it again means that it's not as good because I could remember a few things, but I don't know, maybe I'm just not in the right mood for this episode. I was really looking forward to it, and the previous episode, which ends on a cliffhanger, was as good as I remembered it, even though there's quite a lot of suspense there. So I don't know. The episode picks up, well, actually it doesn't pick up where the previous episode left off. That's not quite true. It picks up with everybody walking into the airport. It seems like the plane landed, they were fine without any problem, and then we realise that actually Lowell is unconscious and it's all in his mind. And we actually see that everybody is huddled on the lifeboat, and they're in the middle of the water. They don't quite know where they are. The plane is, of course, crash landed, and thankfully everybody seems relatively unharmed, but they have no idea about where they are or how they're going to get back to shore. And it's intense. And I will say I did still kind of feel that tension. A lot of people are getting quite agitated, very scared, snapping at each other, and this is obviously understandable. But we also have them helping each other out, and that's also really lovely to see. I just feel like it wasn't... maybe it resolved itself too quickly, because the second part of the episode, and as I said, this is a spoiler, I won't say exactly how they get there, but the second part of the episode is Joe changing his attitude about Sandpiper and how much he wants to continue with the business. And obviously he's down one plane, which is a big deal. And yeah, I feel like exploring Joe's emotions there is definitely important. And I think they maybe did a good job of that. But I do feel like we still resolved the first half of the episode a little bit too quickly. And I'm not saying it should have been a 3-parter. I'm generally not a fan of 3-parter of anything. I feel like for most stories, it's not necessary. But actually, maybe with this one, I wouldn't have minded that. Maybe if they'd done that, I would be saying that it was far too long. But either way, I feel like the pacing for this episode isn't that great. And watching it a second time, it just wasn't as good as I remembered it, which is... thankfully, with sitcoms, unusual. One of the great things about sitcoms is that even when you know what's happening, maybe I've worked out why. I was going to say, even when you know what's happening with sitcoms, they're enjoyable to watch again and again because the comedy just hits every time when it's done right, of course. And maybe that's why this one isn't that good second time round, because it's not particularly funny. It is dramatic to an extent. It is suspenseful for a little bit, but it's not funny, so maybe that's why it didn't work the second time round, whereas most other episodes, obviously they are quite funny, and they do work with a second viewing. So, yeah, I think maybe that's why. We'll go with that. Either way, it's not a bad episode. Lifeboat does work well. It's quite a heavy start to season 4, actually, and I do remember liking it the first time round, so I have to say credit where it's due. The first time watching it, I did enjoy it, but unfortunately, with this second watch, it wasn't as good. There are some good points, but in general, it was kind of bland. I will say that I'm very much looking forward to, season 4 in general. We also have a guest appearance, a very, very, very brief cameo coming up at some point soon. Actually, I think it's probably about halfway through the season, so we'll get there next year at some point. But either way, Season 4 is a good season that I'm looking forward to rewatching. Thankfully, most of the episodes are much funnier than this one, but that being said, Lifeboat is fine, but just not quite as fine as it was the first time I watched it.